What if I told you that the brightest people often hide the darkest fears? That the ones who smile the widest may secretly fear being forgotten the most? Leo. The king. The leader. The star of the show. But what happens when the applause fades and the spotlight turns off? Today, we're diving into a side of Leo that rarely gets talked about. Not the confident, radiant version everyone admires, but the part that craves approval. That fears being irrelevant. That pushes others away just to feel in control. If you're a Leo, or if someone close to you is, what you're about to hear might surprise you. Because behind every powerful Leo, there's a story. A story of pride and pain. Of love and control. Of wanting to be seen, but not fully known. This video isn't here to judge. It's here to understand. To reveal. To heal. And if you're someone who loves diving deep into astrology, psychology, and personal growth, you're in the right place. Make sure to subscribe. Hit that like button and share this with someone who might need it. Because what we're about to uncover is not just about Leo. It's about all of us. Have you ever met someone who lights up the room the moment they walk in? Their presence is magnetic. Their confidence, undeniable. They laugh loudly, speak boldly, and seem to carry a crown on their head, even if it's invisible. That's Leo. But have you ever stopped to wonder what fuels that glow? What lies beneath the need to be seen, admired, applauded? The truth is, many Leos aren't just chasing admiration. They're running from something deeper. A fear of being forgotten. Of being invisible in a world that never stops moving. For many Leos, applause isn't just pleasant, it's necessary. It's how they measure their worth. How they prove, both to others and to themselves, that they matter. From the outside, this can look like confidence. But on the inside, it's often more complex. Take Mia, for example. She's the kind of friend who throws the best parties. She'll spend hours planning the perfect playlist, curating the vibe, making sure everyone feels good. And when the night ends, people thank her, hug her, tell her how amazing she is. But what they don't see is how empty she feels if no one says anything. If no one notices her efforts. It's not that she's selfish, it's that she's wired to find value through reflection. Like the sun needing a mirror to see its own light. For Leos, admiration isn't about ego in the way people often assume. It's about identity. If no one claps, did they do something meaningful? If no one notices, were they ever really there? That's why drama becomes such a powerful force in a Leo's life. Not the petty kind, but the kind that adds color, sound, emotion. For Leo, life without drama feels lifeless. They want each moment to mean something. Each relationship to have depth. Each day to feel like a story worth telling. You might see this in the way they react to small things. A delayed message becomes a sign of rejection. A forgettable compliment feels like a dismissal. They don't do this to cause trouble. They do it because they feel everything more intensely than they let on. Drama gives them permission to express what's hard to say. It allows them to turn confusion into clarity, silence into spectacle. But here's the twist, when you rely too much on drama, reality can start to feel flat. The quiet, slow, everyday moments begin to lose value. A walk in the park isn't enough. They want fireworks, passion, declarations. And that's beautiful until it becomes exhausting. For them. And for the people around them. This hunger for intensity often connects to a deeper emotional truth. Many Leos are afraid of being ordinary. They carry a quiet belief that if they're not impressive, they'll be overlooked. If they're not remarkable, they'll be replaceable. And so they overcompensate. They shine brighter, talk louder, do more. Always trying to stay one step ahead of that shadow of doubt. And in this quest, the ego becomes both armor and illusion. The Leo ego is strong, not because it's arrogant, but because it's protective. It guards the part of them that still feels small. Still feels like they have to prove something to be loved. This is where the paradox begins. Because while they appear larger than life, many Leos are silently asking, do you really see me? Do you love me, or just the version of me I perform? And that's a question that lives deep in their subconscious. Sometimes it shows up in their career. They chase promotions, not just to succeed, but to feel valued. Sometimes it shows up in relationships. They give so much love, but struggle to receive it without suspicion. Because if love isn't loud, is it real? If respect isn't shouted, is it enough? But here's the thing. The greatest strength of a Leo isn't their charm. It's not even their leadership. It's their heart. A Leo who feels secure in their worth, who doesn't need constant applause to feel alive, becomes one of the most generous, uplifting, powerful people you will ever meet. And that journey begins with one simple truth. You don't have to perform to be loved. You don't have to shine to be seen. You are already enough. So if you're a Leo listening to this, take a breath. You don't have to be on all the time. You don't have to prove anything today. Your presence, your love, your story, it matters. Even when it's quiet. And if you love a Leo, remember this. Sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is see them, truly see them, when they're not performing. When they're just being. Because that's where their real magic lies. Sometimes, what we admire most in someone is also what they struggle with most silently. Leos drive to lead. To organize, to inspire, it's powerful, magnetic. But underneath that confidence, there's often a fear that if they're not in charge, they'll lose their place. It's not just about control. It's about feeling secure. Feeling like they belong in the room. Many Leos learned early on that the only way to feel safe was to be strong. To be the one who knows the plan. To be the one everyone turns to. So they became the leader. Not because they always wanted to, but because they felt like they had to. And let's be honest, there's beauty in that. Their ability to take charge in chaos. To bring direction where others hesitate. But when that role becomes a survival instinct, it can become suffocating. Because what happens when they don't have all the answers? What happens when they just want to rest and let someone else lead for once? That's when the fear kicks in. The fear that they'll be overlooked. That someone else will take the spotlight. That without the crown, they won't matter. And that fear makes them vulnerable to something many Leos don't even realize is happening. Being manipulated. When someone knows that Leo needs to feel needed, they can use that. They can flatter them, push them forward, make them feel like the star, only to guide Leo into decisions that serve someone else's agenda. Because Leo trusts easily when they feel admired. And not every compliment is honest. Not every admirer is a friend. This is where the inner work begins. Learning the difference between being admired and being valued. Admiration can be shallow. Value runs deep. Leo has to ask themselves, are the people around me cheering for who I am? Or for what I give them? It's not always an easy question. Because the desire to be central, to be special, it's strong. And when you've built your world around being the sun, it's hard to imagine stepping back into the shade. But sometimes, stepping back is the bravest thing Leo can do. To see who stays. Who still reaches out. Who still says, I see you. Even when you're not shining. And this leads us to something even deeper. Something that often hides beneath the surface of Leo's vibrant energy. Their relationship with pride. Pride is often misunderstood. People think it's arrogance. But for Leo, pride is protection. It's the armor they wear to keep their heart from breaking. It says, you can't hurt me. I already know who I am. But what happens when that pride keeps them from learning? From growing? From admitting they got it wrong? You'll notice it sometimes in arguments. In the way they dig in. How they refuse to say, "I made a mistake." Not because they don't care. But because admitting fault feels like weakness. Like opening a door to criticism they're not ready to face. But here's what's true. The strongest leaders are not the ones who are always right. They're the ones who can say, "I was wrong, and I'm learning." That kind of humility doesn't weaken Leo. It elevates them. It makes people trust them more, not less. Because it shows depth. It shows humanity. And Leo has so much to teach the world about courage. Not just the courage to take the stage, but the courage to step off it. To listen. To soften. To ask questions instead of always giving answers. Take Daniel, for example. He runs a creative agency. Everyone looks to him for the next big idea. For years, he prided himself on never needing help. He made all the calls. But behind the scenes, he was exhausted. And when a campaign failed, instead of admitting he was burned out, he doubled down. Pushed harder. Blamed others. Until his team started walking away. One day, his assistant sat him down and said, "We don't need you to be perfect. We need you to be real." That moment broke something open in him. And for the first time, Daniel asked his team for input. For support. He apologized. And something amazing happened, they respected him more. Not because he had all the answers. But because he had the courage to say he didn't. That's the power of letting go of the mask. Of realizing that pride doesn't have to mean distance. That admitting vulnerability doesn't make you small, it makes you whole. Now, for Leo, letting go of control isn't easy. They're used to protecting their image. Used to curating every detail. But when they start allowing others in, when they start embracing the quiet, they discover something powerful. That their worth isn't tied to performance. It's tied to presence. To truth. To the relationships that stay, even when the show is over. Because in the end, Leo's real strength isn't their roar. It's their ability to listen. To grow. To connect beyond the spotlight. That's where the transformation begins. And what comes next in this journey might be the most surprising part yet. Because in the next 3 insights, we'll explore the emotional contradictions that define Leo's deepest fears, their approach to love, and their struggle between power and peace. You won't want to miss what we're about to uncover. Have you ever loved someone so deeply that it scared you? That's what love feels like for Leo. It's not just a connection. It's a fire. And when they love, they go all in. They give their time, their energy, their heart. But they also expect the same in return. Not because they're demanding. But because love, for Leo, is sacred. It's not a game. It's everything. Leo doesn't love halfway. They show up with intensity. With grand gestures. With fierce loyalty. But sometimes, that intensity becomes overwhelming. Not just for their partner, but even for themselves. You see, beneath all that devotion is a quiet fear. A fear of being betrayed. Of being replaced. Of being abandoned after giving so much. So they try to protect what they love. They take the lead. They plan everything. They make the decisions. And to them, this feels like care. Like protection. Like love in action. But to the other person, it can sometimes feel like control. Like their voice doesn't matter. Like their freedom is slowly disappearing. It's a delicate balance. Leo wants to hold on tight. But in doing so, they can forget that love also needs space. Space to breathe. To grow. To feel free. I once spoke to a woman named Alina. She was in love with a Leo man. He adored her. Wrote her poems. Planned surprise weekends. always called to check on her. At first, it felt magical. But over time, she felt like she couldn't move without him watching. Like her life was being directed, not shared. When she tried to speak up, he didn't understand. He thought she was pulling away. But all she wanted was to feel equal. To feel trusted. To feel like she could have her own space without losing his love. This is the shadow side of Leo's devotion. When their desire to protect turns into possession. When their love, which starts from a beautiful place, becomes too much to carry. But there's a powerful truth here. Leo doesn't do this out of malice. They do it out of fear. Out of a deep longing to be chosen, fully, unquestionably, forever. And once Leo learns that true love isn't about holding tight, but about standing side by side, everything changes. Their relationships become softer, more open, more human. Because the greatest gift you can give someone isn't control. It's trust. And that trust is something Leo must also learn to bring into their work. In their career, Leo often shines. They bring energy, creativity, and a bold vision. They step into roles others avoid. They lead teams, pitch ideas, take risks. But with that same fire comes a hunger. A hunger to be the best. To win. To stand out. This isn't just ambition. It's identity. Leo's sense of self is often tied to achievement. To success. To the admiration that comes from being seen as capable. But here's the catch. When success becomes your self-worth, failure feels like death. Even a small mistake can feel massive. Even a slow month at work can trigger panic. Not because the work matters more than life, but because being valuable is how Leo feels safe. So they push. They compete. They stay up late. Take on too much, burn out, just to keep that feeling of I'm doing enough. And that drive is admirable. But it can become dangerous when it blocks connection. When Leo is so focused on winning, they stop listening. They stop collaborating. They forget that leadership isn't about being above others. It's about rising with them. Jared, a marketing executive I once coached, was classic Leo. Brilliant ideas. Big presence. Total confidence. But his team was struggling. Turnover was high. Morale was low. Why? Because every meeting was a one-man show. He talked more than he listened. Dismissed quiet voices. And unknowingly created a culture of fear. When we dug deeper, he admitted something that broke my heart. He said, if I'm not the smartest person in the room, who am I? That's the pain many Leos never say out loud. That the pressure to be great sometimes overshadows their greatness. That they're so afraid of losing status, they forget how powerful they are just by being real. Once Jared learned to step back, to invite input, to admit mistakes. His team didn't lose respect. They gained trust. And together, they created something far better than he could have done alone. This is the gift of evolution. When Leo learns that their power doesn't shrink when they share it. It grows. Because the best leaders aren't the ones who talk the most. They're the ones who listen the most. And that listening also needs to happen at home. Because in family life, Leo brings the same passion. They want to give their loved ones everything. Security. Opportunities. A better life. They work hard. They plan carefully. They dream big, for everyone. But with that big heart, comes big expectations. Leo often doesn't realize they're projecting their own ambitions onto the people they love. They might want their kids to follow in their footsteps. To be bold. To be excellent. To aim for greatness. But not everyone defines greatness the same way. Some just want peace. Simplicity. A life that feels quiet and whole. And when that happens, Leo can feel disappointed. Not out of cruelty, but out of fear that their loved ones are settling, wasting their potential, not dreaming big enough. But here's the truth. Love is not control. It's support. It's presence. It's letting go of what you wanted for someone and embracing who they are. The most beautiful families aren't the ones who all chase the same dream. They're the ones who stand beside each other, even when the paths are different. So if you're a Leo listening to this, ask yourself, can I love someone fully, even when they don't want what I want? Can I celebrate their quiet wins, even if they don't sparkle? Because your heart is strong enough to hold many kinds of love. Not just the bold and brilliant kind, but also the soft, the slow, the still. And that shift, from expecting to accepting, might be the most powerful transformation of all. But we're not done yet. Because the final 3 insights we're about to explore will take us deeper than ever into the emotional contradictions, the hidden shadows, and the bold truths Leo rarely speaks of, but desperately needs to understand. There's something Leo rarely talks about. Something buried beneath all the ambition, all the drive, all the need to shine. It's the way they silently judge people who don't want more. Not out loud, but inside. That quiet thought that whispers, why are they okay with so little? Leo has a deep disdain for mediocrity. They don't understand how someone can live an ordinary life and feel content. For Leo, life is meant to be big, to be bold, to leave a mark. So when they meet someone who's calm, slow-moving, at peace with simplicity, they can feel frustrated, confused, even disconnected. But here's the thing. That judgment often comes from fear. A fear that if they ever stop climbing, they'll lose their worth. That if they're not constantly reaching for the next level, they'll fade into the background. And so, Leo keeps pushing, keeps chasing, keeps trying to prove that they're not like everyone else. But in doing so, they miss something precious. They miss the quiet wisdom of people who've already found peace, who don't need applause to feel alive, who know how to enjoy the little moments. I once met a man named Raphael. He was a writer. Not famous. Not rich. Just a man with a small home, a garden, and a deep love for stories. His Leo daughter, Clara, was always trying to fix his life, telling him to publish more, go bigger, aim higher. She couldn't understand why he wasn't chasing more. One day, he looked at her and said, "Sweetheart, I already have everything I ever wanted." And in that moment, Clara broke down. Because she realized she'd spent so long trying to make him more like her, that she hadn't really seen him at all. This is what Leo sometimes forgets. That not everyone measures life by scale. Some measure it by joy, by presence, by peace. And when Leo learns to honor that, their relationships deepen. They begin to see that ambition is beautiful, but it's not the only path to meaning. But letting go of judgment isn't easy when you've been taught to lead, when you've always been the one setting the pace. That's why so many Leos struggle with admitting mistakes. Because in their mind, mistakes mean weakness, failure, losing control. And yet, nothing could be further from the truth. The real danger isn't in being wrong. It's in refusing to grow, in pretending you know it all, in closing yourself off from the lessons life is trying to give you. Leos are natural defenders of their own truth. They argue passionately. They stand firm. They lead with conviction. But sometimes, conviction turns into rigidity. They become so sure of their perspective, they stop listening. They stop evolving. And that creates distance. In friendships. In love. Even in how they see themselves. Growth only happens when we're willing to say, "I was wrong. I didn't know. I've changed." And for Leo, saying that isn't weakness. It's power. Because it means they're strong enough to choose truth over image, humility over pride. It means they've stepped into a deeper kind of leadership. One that doesn't just inspire, but also heals. And that healing touches every part of their life. It softens their ego. It opens their heart. It invites connection. Imagine a Leo who can admit when they're hurting. Who can say, "I don't have it all figured out." Who can lead by being human, not perfect. That kind of Leo is unstoppable. Not because they dominate, but because they liberate. And when they embrace that side of themselves, they become magnetic in a whole new way. They become leaders people choose to follow. Not out of fear, but out of love. They become friends people confide in. Partners people trust. Humans people admire, not for their perfection, but for their honesty. And that journey begins with one simple act. Choosing growth over pride. Truth over image. Real connection over control. Because the strongest Leo isn't the loudest. It's the one who listens to their heart, especially when it's uncomfortable. Especially when it whispers a truth they don't want to hear. So if you've ever felt that pressure to be right all the time, to lead without doubt, to never show weakness, let this be your reminder. You're allowed to change. You're allowed to evolve. And you're allowed to make space for others to shine too. And as we move into the final stretch of this journey, the last 3 insights will take us even deeper. We'll explore the emotional needs Leo hides from the world. The way they love that often creates conflict. And the surprising truth about their path to real happiness. What comes next may challenge what you think you know about Leo. And maybe, even what you think you know about yourself. Some people shine when they speak. Others shine when they listen. Leo often shines by doing both, taking up space with passion, but also lifting others when they're at their lowest. And when it comes to friendships, Leo is deeply loyal. Fiercely protective. They will defend you when no one else does. Celebrate you louder than anyone else. And make you feel like the most important person in the world. But there's a pattern that sometimes gets in the way. Leo can forget that friendship isn't a stage. It's a conversation. And sometimes, in their beautiful energy, they dominate the room. Their stories, their plans, their opinions, they take up so much space that others begin to shrink. Not because Leo means harm, but because they don't always notice. In their desire to give, to impress, to lead, they forget to pause, to ask, to listen. And over time, this can leave friends feeling unseen. Like supporting characters in a story where Leo always plays the lead. It's a lonely feeling, being around someone so warm, yet still feeling invisible. I remember Maya, a Leo with a heart of gold. She planned every get-together. Organized birthday surprises. Always brought the laughs. But one day, her closest friends stopped answering texts. When she finally asked why, the answer broke her heart. "I don't feel like there's room for me when I'm with you." That moment changed everything. Maya didn't mean to take up all the air in the room. But she realized she had been so focused on giving love that she forgot love also means making space. So she started showing up differently. Asking more questions. Letting silences breathe. Sharing the spotlight. And what happened? Her friendships deepened. Not because she dimmed her light, but because she let others shine beside her. This is Leo's invitation. To lead not just with presence, but with presence of mind. To remember that true connection is mutual. That being powerful doesn't mean always being loud. Sometimes, real power is in holding space. And this brings us to perhaps the deepest lesson of all. Leo's path to personal growth isn't about becoming more. It's about becoming whole. Balancing their boldness with humility. Their drive with patience. Their self-belief with empathy. Because for all their confidence, Leos carry a quiet question inside. Am I enough if I stop performing? And the answer, of course, is yes. But that truth doesn't come from applause. It comes from within. From learning to sit with stillness. From accepting love that isn't loud or dramatic, but steady, safe, real. It's in the moments when Leo doesn't need to impress, doesn't need to explain, doesn't need to be everything to everyone, that their truest power begins to rise. And that kind of Leo? The one who can hold their head high without needing to be worshipped. That Leo changes lives. Because they don't just shine. They illuminate others. They bring warmth, not just light. And they lead, not by standing above, but by walking alongside. So if you're a Leo, or you love one, I hope you see the beauty in all of this. In the parts that lead, and the parts that still need healing. In the boldness and the softness. In the voice that says, I've got this. And the quieter one that whispers, I still have so much to learn. Because that's what makes you powerful. Not just the fire, but the courage to use it gently. If you saw yourself in this video, maybe in the pride, the passion, or the vulnerability, take a deep breath. You're doing better than you think. And if this touched something in you, even a little, share it with someone who might need it. Someone who's been carrying the weight of always being strong. Or someone who loves a Leo and wants to understand them better. And if you haven't already, hit subscribe. Not just because it helps the channel, but because the next videos go even deeper into the emotional worlds of each sign, and how we all, in different ways, are learning to come home to ourselves. Thanks for being here. See you in the next one.